When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The Presidencies of the United States is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Hello and welcome to the Presidencies of the United States. I'm your host, Jerry Landry. As this is a Seat at the Table episode, I am joined by a friend and fellow podcaster. Today, we are joined by Howard Dory of Plodding Through the Presidents. Howard, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So, Howard and I have had a behind-the-scenes conversation about today's subject for quite a bit. And so, knowing that he was coming up, I could not think of anybody better to talk to about William Wirt than Howard. But before we go into Wirt's extensive life, career, this guy who seems to pop up everywhere whenever you're looking into the early Republic period of presidential history, I wanted to give Howard an opportunity for our listeners. If you haven't listened to Plodding Through the Presidents yet, you really should. And Howard, take it away. Tell us what you do with Plodding and where folks can find you.
I co-host Plodding Through the Presidents with my wife, Jessica, and we dig into lesser-known stories of the early republic, usually having to do with presidents or founders or their families, and kind of chase down the details and the rabbit holes of more peculiar stories, like Thomas Jefferson's killer ram or the stuffed Billy Possum toy that was named in honor of William Howard Taft and didn't quite take off like the teddy bear. Those sorts of stories we really like to dig into, as well as some more serious subjects like Andrew Jackson's adopted Native American son, Lincoln, and the real story behind him and what we know and what we don't know. So those are the kinds of things that we love to dig into, and you can find out more at plodpod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Absolutely. And I will say we're recording just after you had a 2-part episode on the Washington cherry tree, quote unquote, myth. But I love that you talked about how it has been seen as a myth. And then you found guests to talk to who are saying, hold on, wait a minute, let's not be so hasty about that. And I think for folks who haven't listened to it yet, I highly encourage you to listen to it, because I know for me, it did make me pause and think about, are there areas where historians kind of jump the gun and, oh, well, of course this can't be, but that's not what historians should do.
Yeah, and I think even historians can only be experts on so many subjects. And there are such little peculiar things that somebody can really devote themselves to and find out more maybe than anybody else. And when it comes to things like this, like Parson Weems of the cherry tree myth, the folks that have really dug into it the most should be listened to.
Yes, absolutely. And so we are going to dive into one of those lesser known figures in presidential history. Howard, I know that you are familiar with him. Our listeners may not be quite so much, but hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll understand a bit more about William Wirt, because I have done the research and tried to do the deep dive. And there actually are a few people who have dedicated themselves and their research into Wirt's life. And anyway, I think this one's going to be an interesting one. I'm looking forward to sharing it with everybody. And Howard, I say let's go ahead and dive into Wirt.
All right, let's do it.
Let's play Burlington's Guess That Price. Back to school means back to saving. We're bringing you kids' jeans starting at, hold on a minute, just $11.99. Burlington's acing this test. What about character backpacks? We've got them starting at $12.99. Burlington's done it again. How about sneakers for the kids? A-plus brands and right on trend starting at $11.99. Saving is now in session. Burlington, deals, brands, wow! Styles and selections vary by location.
So we always start with place of birth. So William Wirt was born in Bladensburg, Maryland, as the youngest of 6 children to Jacob and Henrietta Wirt on November 8th, 1772. So both of his parents were immigrants to the British North American colonies, with Jacob originally being from Switzerland, while Henrietta was from Germany. So very recent immigrants to what were then the colonies, but spoiler alert, not for much longer. Now, I haven't been able to find whether his parents married before or after they made the voyage across the Atlantic, but the two would become proprietors of, quote, a tavern where some of the South's most prosperous planters and merchants gathered.
I love the idea. Like, I think about Martin Van Buren. I think about all the people that grew up in a tavern, and what a great experience that was back then as far as just learning about the world. And it's like, I mean, it's like the equivalent of a university education, but a little more worldly in its, I don't know, local sense. I love it.
Absolutely. And as somebody whose mom and grandma owned a bar while I was growing up, you do meet folks from all parts of life, and especially, Bladensburg at this time, now it's part of the DC metro area. DC, of course, wasn't there at that point, but it was still a place where you may have people from all parts of the world coming in. You don't know. And it's so fascinating to think of how this may have influenced him.
For sure. And that, I feel like I understand you better now, too.
Yeah. It puts a few things into perspective. But turning back to Wirt, Bladensburg was described at the time as, quote, a small but thriving tobacco port on a tributary of the Potomac River. Among its inhabitants were a number of wealthy merchants engaged in transatlantic trade. So again, kind of thinking through, and, I can understand this experience. Before we got on this call, I was actually listening to the Chicago Cubs. I'm a big Cubs fan, even though I'm from Southeast Louisiana, because we had a guy come in from Chicago. He gave me a Cubs jacket. I've been a fan ever since. You never know who you're going to meet in these circumstances.
Definitely. Yeah, I grew up, going to Cubs games at Wrigley Field, and my mom was a huge fan, so that's in my blood too. Nobody ever house and gave me a jacket though, so I feel a little left out.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, the Cubs are up right now. So, and also up, the Wirts were a family on the rise. Now, unfortunately, Jacob's death in 1774 meant that the family would have some struggles. Henrietta was left with the tavern, quote, along with a half lot with a new house, a brick store in Bladensburg, 2 lots in Hamburg near Georgetown, and, because this is Maryland at the time, 2 women slaves. Now, the children ended up with getting a part of Jacob's inheritance as well, smaller portions, but they at least got a little bit. But also, this was a time war was coming. And so naturally, being so young, William didn't remember much about the war. But he did recall a memory of men in uniform strolling through the streets of Bladensburg. But we have an account of William at this time, and it notes that he was, quote, a lively, shrewd, pleasant-tempered, and beautiful child who could charm adults with his quick wit and gregarious mannerisms.
Off to a good start.
I know. I mean, when Gregorius is in the mix,
Yes. Yes. If there's one word from what I do know about Wirt, which is not as much as you, that's it. That's it.
Gregorious. So he attended school, quote, across the square from their home before it moved a mile down the Bladensburg Georgetown Road. Wirt would later write his reminiscences of his childhood up to the age of 11, which, while we don't have time to recount in full here, as there's so much more to discuss, there are some interesting and vibrant stories and characters. Howard, you could probably make a few episodes of plotting through it.
Yeah. I can't wait. I want give me what you got. What you got?
Absolutely. But Wirt in 1779 was enrolled in a classical academy in Georgetown, so he's getting an early education. Meanwhile, Henrietta remarried to Peter Carnes, who was described as, quote, a family friend who stepped in and paid for Jacob Wirt's funeral and assisted the Wirts with running the town. So somebody in the area that kind of knew, and then, yeah. No evidence that he was responsible for Jacob's death, but, that could be a story too.
Yep.
Now, sadly, this marriage would only last a few years, and the family would face tragedy once more when Henrietta fell ill and died in 1779. So William, at the age of 8, became an orphan. So again, the family property remaining was distributed amongst the 6 children, but Wirt biographer Jeffrey Glassner asserts that, quote, William's share could not have been more than a modest amount. Now, Carnes would continue to manage the family's finances for a few years before moving to Albany, Georgia, with William's sister Elizabeth, who he then proceeded to marry.
Huh. This is, I'm getting some Nabokov Lolita vibes here. It's a little sus, Jerry.
It's a little sus. It's
gross.
It's very gross because this guy is now William's stepfather and brother-in-law.
Ugh. And he's at this point, he was 8 when he became an orphan, so he's got to be pretty young here too. How long do you think they waited between,
Yeah, I didn't find specifics on that. I'm sure that there's some more information out there, but it was just, when I read this, it was just like, oh, this is getting into like Ptolemy Habsburg territory.
Yeah, I can see how Wirt might be like, I've got to get out of this place.
Yeah. And so naturally, after his mother's passing, he did get out. He was sent to a classical school 40 miles from Bladensburg in Charles County. Now, the income from the family's properties would be enough for William to use, quote, to attend a series of day schools and classical academies until 1787, when his share of the inheritance gave out. Now, the school that he was in at that point in Montgomery County also closed, so even if he was able to make the finances work, the 15-year-old William was still on his own once more. And so you can only imagine how he felt at this point. It seemed like everything was just a tragedy. And then there's his brother-in-law, father-in-law, that mess.
Yeah.
But luckily, the father of a classmate of Wirt's, a man named Benjamin Edwards, heard about Wirt's plight and offered for William to come and live with them while tutoring his classmate Ninian and 2 of his cousins in Montgomery County, Maryland. Now, as described by historian Chase Mooney, quote, as a young man, Wirt had lived for some time in the Edwards home. He and Ninian were almost brothers. And a brief side note on Ninian here, and he'll come back up for a brief mention later on, but he would actually go on to become first the territorial governor of Illinois, then serve stints as senator and governor of the Prairie State.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he left that much of a legacy, because I grew up in Illinois and I don't think I've ever heard the name,
And in studying more of that history, he comes up more often, but yeah, he's not somebody that most folks, there is this other guy who's from Illinois who, they now call it the land of, they don't call it the land of Edwards.
Yeah. Well, it helped that, his face was already on the license plates and stuff, so.
Exactly. Makes it easy. Might as well. But Benjamin Edwards would take Wirt under his wing. He allowed him to read law under him, which was the most common path for folks to become lawyers at that time. And Benjamin had been impressed by examples of Wirt's schoolwork and, quote, counseled him on the art of oratory. Sadly, after 20 months at the Edwards home, William began to suffer from, quote, symptoms of consumption and was moved back to Georgia with his sister Elizabeth and the stepfather, brother-in-law to recover over the winter of 1789. But as you can imagine, he didn't stick around there for too long. He instead went back north to Maryland to study law at Montgomery Courthouse before being advised of more favorable conditions for lawyers in Virginia. And so by 1791 or 1792, Wirt moved to Fredericksburg, Virginia, where he studied under a former U.S. District Attorney for 5 months before being admitted to the bar in the Old Dominion. And this would become the launching point for him to begin his legal practice. So he actually began his practice in Culpeper and Albemarle counties in the fall of 1792, and as noted by Jabor, quote, wasted no time in putting his useful skill of acquiring patrons to work, because he wasn't an immediate success. And most young lawyers at this time aren't, because there's so much competition. There are already established lawyers. It's hard for folks, even in more rural areas, to kind of break in. So he actually had to take up a tutoring gig in order to pay for his already developed taste for, as Glassner describes it, quote, gracious living. Yes, he likes the finer things in life, and you kind of have to have money for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like lawyers back then, like 80% of their time was spent on a horse. You know, like nothing was, you couldn't work from home, and there was no office where everybody came to. You had to, you had to travel a lot. Although maybe in Fredericksburg they did come to him. I don't know.
Well, yes, and you will see as we go along, that is going to be a constant theme through the rest of Wirt's life. He is spending a lot of time on the road. They are not coming to him. He's going to them, and we'll see the impacts that has on him.
All right.
But in this case, while he was still younger, it was good, because this tutoring job would afford him an entree into, quote, the intellectual circles of Culpeper, Orange, and Albemarle counties. Folks may not be as familiar with Culpeper, but listeners of this podcast have probably heard Orange and Albemarle come up quite a bit, because he would soon make the acquaintance of certain folks. May have heard of them: Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, Representative James Madison, Senator James Monroe, who were all living in this area at this time. And these folks would go on to advise him on advancing his career, encouraging him to go beyond his law practice and join them, because at this point, they're deep into politics. But for the time, Wirt ignored these calls and instead worked on building up his legal career. And as you said, Howard, Glassner describes this time, quote, the Virginia courts of the time were true circuits, with the lawyers traveling from county to county on horseback to ply their trade on court days, develop a broader clientele, and further sharpen their skills. And so he would spread his practice across multiple counties, but his growing social connections would soon bring about an opportunity to develop a domestic life, as on May 28, 1795, Wirt married the 23-year-old Mildred Gilmer, quote, the eldest child of Revolutionary veteran, physician, and planner George Gilmer. So he's married. Yay!
Good for him. 1795, good year for marriages. I feel like maybe that's when John Quincy Adams got married, or at least engaged. It's a year for love, man.
Editor's note here. John Quincy Adams and Louisa Catherine Johnson got engaged in April 1796 and were married in July 1797. But the initial love connection was made in 1795, as that was when the two first met. Good year for love. Now, this new couple moved into her father's home, Penn Park, near Charlottesville. Sadly, Mildred's father died a couple of years after they moved in, and Wirt, named as an executor of the will, also benefited from the bequeathment of a portion of Gilmer's estate to him and Mildred. So they're starting to build up at least a little bit of some wealth. And this allowed the Wirts to build a home named Rose Hill close to Penn Park, but they still spent most of their time at the Gilmer estate. Now, it would be during this time that Wirt became friends with two other young Virginian lawyers named James Barber and Dabney Carr. The trio rode circuit together and became close. But supposedly, one night while stopping off at the homestead of one of Carr's relatives, Barber made predictions on each of their futures. For Wirt, he is purported to have said that, quote, "Your fortune will conduct you to the Attorney Generalship of the United States, where you shall have harder work to do than making bombastic speeches in the woods of Albemarle."
Wow. Wait, so who said that about?
So that was his friend James Barber. He basically said he was trying to predict all of their futures, and for Wirt, he's like, "Yeah, you're going to become Attorney General, and you're going to have to do a lot of hard work."
Did he? You got his prediction about Dabney Carr?
I remember it was in there. I didn't include this since we weren't focusing on Carr, but I'll find that and send it to you.
Okay, and you can. I mean, I feel like if I keep interjecting, we'll go forever.
Oh, no worries.
I just found a letter. Dabney Carr, I think, was Thomas Jefferson's nephew.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken. And I came across a letter the other day on the Founders Archives from Jefferson to Dabney Carr saying, like, what I'm about to tell you cannot be shared with anyone, including your wife. This is a secret. Wow. I want you to come and be basically like the chair of law at the University of Virginia. I want you to be the law instructor. It's going to be super easy. You only have to work a couple hours every other day. You're basically going to be reading already written stuff and interjecting. Basically, like, I'm offering you this super cushy job with a house, and it's going to be right down the hill from me, near all these people you grew up. Everybody I know, I'm sure, will agree. Just say yes and come do it. And Dabney Carr said, I can't do it. I would love to live there, but I am so extraordinarily unqualified for the position that it would make you look bad if I took it. And no.
Wow.
And I don't think they wrote to each other much after that, although it was just a year before Jefferson died.
It's funny that you bring that up. Put a pin in that, because we're also going to have a UVA connection in talking about William Wirt.
All righty. All right. I'll get my pens out right now.
It sounds rather similar.
All right. My pins and my red string are ready.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's one of the things that I've loved about studying Wirt is that you get all these connections, because I knew of Dabney Carr. I didn't know quite as much about him. I knew more about James Barber. Spoiler alert, he is going to get an episode because he does end up in the cabinet at some point. But, seeing all these connections, all these figures, and that's been one of the things I've loved about the Seat at the Table series, starting to see those threads come together, and you really see how connected everybody was.
Yeah.
But in terms of that prediction about him becoming Attorney General, I guess we'll just have to wait and see if that comes true.
That's pretty wild. What year was that? Like,
so,
how many years?
Yeah, so that was around like 1795, late 1790s, seems like. Yeah.
Pretty prescient.
Yes. But Glassner also notes that, quote, "There are some indications that Wirt's zest for life and desire to party well into the night exceeded even the somewhat liberal standards for young gentlemen in the 1790s.
I love him.
He liked himself a good time. But as for William and Mildred, little is known about their relationship, and sadly, their relationship only lasted a few short years. Though one source said that their marriage was childless, another said that shortly after the birth of their only child, a daughter named Catherine Grattan Gilmer Wirt, Mildred passed away on September 17th, 1799. Now, I couldn't find anything more about the supposed daughter. If it was that Mildred died in childbirth, because of complications from childbirth. It doesn't seem like if there was a child, that she survived either. So either way, it's awful. He's just lost yet another person in his life.
Yeah, you look at folks like Jefferson and others, and it's just string after string of death and grief, and still somehow going on.
Yeah. Which Wirt struggled for a bit. He was orphaned very early on. He's now lost his wife. There's a lot of PTSD going on, I'm sure. And Wirt's friends were concerned. They were really like, oh my gosh, he's not doing well. So they encouraged him to stand for election. They did, like friends do, encouraged him to stand for election to the Virginia House of Delegates, because that would give him something to occupy his time. You're feeling down, run for state legislature.
Yeah, we gotta showcase this depression in front of more people.
Yeah,
that's gonna help.
Yeah, that's gonna help. Yep. Wirt, of course, he was like, no, I don't think I'm ready for that right now. I've kind of got some stuff going on. So instead, folks arranged for him to get the position of clerk of the Virginia House of Delegates, a position that, quote, occupied only a few of the winter months, allowing the person holding it to pursue other interests the remainder of the year. So not quite as intense as, representing a district in the state legislature.
He's easing himself into it.
Exactly. He's easing himself in. And given that this position had been occupied previously by the likes of George Wythe and Edmund Randolph, it seemed like this was a good stepping stone for this promising young man.
It's like the Mickey Mouse Club.
It is like the Mickey Mouse Club. You got to find your way in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you're in, look at where they went. So many stars.
Exactly. By this point, Wirt was starting to do well for himself, to the point that he was able to purchase an enslaved individual, quote, as a valet and coachman for his two-wheeled chair. Now, naturally, we will have to discuss his enslavement of people when we get to the end of this episode, because it is definitely in that disgrace category.
Yeah.
But this was, at the time in Virginia, a sign of wealth.
So he inherited Mildred's father's estate. Do you know if any enslaved people came along with that, or what number we're looking at now?
Yeah, I didn't see anything specifically. You can probably assume that there were at least some, but this was the first, instance that I've seen of him actually like acquiring somebody.
Right.
Yeah. So moving to Richmond after the death of Mildred, he roomed for a time with George Hay, who would eventually become Monroe's son-in-law. And Wirt was described at the time as attracting, quote, a lively circle of friends with his banter and dramatic eloquence, enhanced by his 6-foot frame, intense blue eyes, and unkempt, light-colored curls that fell forward onto his forehead and distracted the eye from his large nose.
Wow, I feel like that's the style with the kids these days.
I know, it sounds very similar.
Like that.
Yeah,
they're doing the work.
They're doing the work. They were like, we've got to look like this guy.
Yeah, no one can see our foreheads ever.
No. Well, and the quote goes on that, quote, William's fondness for good food and drink already showed in his general fullness of development, as one acquaintance delicately put it. And indeed, it seems like he might have gone a bit on the wild side after Mildred's death, with late-night parties and intoxication. Which, yeah, he was probably not in a good place.
Right.
Presumably towards the end of 1799, it is believed that William met someone at church who quickly became the center of his romantic interest. Born in January 1784, Elizabeth Washington Gamble was, quote, the second daughter of one of Richmond's most prominent merchants. Now, Elizabeth had grown up in Richmond, surrounded by the leading men of Virginia society, as her father continued his rise in the world. She also grew up in a time when women from more affluent families began to have greater access to education rooted in, quote, a classical curriculum to ensure that they were able to be good, quote, Republican wives and mothers. So Elizabeth and her older sister Nancy attended a private female seminary, and it seems that both were seen as promising marriage prospects as they attracted their fair share of interested suitors. But though she was the younger sister, at the age of 15, Elizabeth outshone her older sister and attracted more suitors.
That's tough.
Yeah.
It really was. I really do feel like Jane Austen is a window
Yeah.
into this whole time.
Yeah. Just if you want to know what this is like, just go ahead and read some Jane Austen novels. You'll understand. Because you just picture like Nancy sitting there and these guys just kind of walking by. Hey, how's it going? Hey, Elizabeth.
Exactly.
But turning back to Wirt, professionally, as a possible indication of his recovery from his grief, Wirt took on a high-profile client in 1800 when he was invited to join the defense team for James Thompson Callender, who was facing charges under the Sedition Act. Yes, of course, Callender is coming into the mix.
Oh, Callender. Oh, what a guy. Ooh, what a story.
Yes, and I know you've talked about him. I've talked about him. There's so much about Callender, and while it's beyond our scope here, he is one of those figures that when you come up to Callender, it's like, oh yeah, there's going to be a story.
For sure. Yeah. That's just exciting because his trial, everything. I mean, he's the reason that we know about Thomas Jefferson's relationship, in quotes, with Sally Hemings, about Alexander Hamilton and the Reynolds affair. And he's the guy that Jefferson sort of hired to call John Adams hermaphrodite who, wasn't fit to be president. Callender, wow. That's and Wirt's defending him in a trial where he's accused of basically writing bad things about the Adams administration and Adams. Is that right?
Yes. So basically, this is that point where he's still on Jefferson's side. He's been writing these, and it really is, it's just muckraking. It is you think about the worst of our political attacks. It's along those lines. It is just really going after John Adams, his administration. It is attacking them personally. Like you said, this accusation of John Adams being a hermaphrodite is thrown in. And so at this point, the Sedition Act was in place. So he was being put on trial. And Jefferson's like, I know a guy.
Now, was this sort of a planned kind of trial from Jefferson's perspective? Like they wanted this to be a show to show how awful the Sedition Act was. And Jefferson just comes off so terribly in his... he's going to come off more terribly, I feel, in the rest of the episode too, but whew.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, this is the point. So Jefferson, even though he's the sitting vice president at this point, he is still actively working behind the scenes, arranging things like this to challenge the Adams administration, to challenge Federalist policy. And he's involving so many folks in this, and Wirt is in the midst of this because he arranges for Wirt to join the legal team defending Callender. And Wirt was actually the youngest member of the defense team. But this, of course, didn't help Callender. He was found guilty, and he'd have to wait until Jefferson became president and pardoned him, as well as others who had been convicted under the sedition law before he was free. And that would become a whole thing that is outside of our scope. But if you want to learn more, you can learn more through Plotting Through the Presidents, through presidencies. We talk about when Callender turns on Jefferson.
Yes, it's a story. But yeah, poor Wirt, he's put in this big position, this big sensational trial, youngest guy there, and he loses.
But it at least gets his name out there. He's moving forward. He's making these, more connections within the Democratic Republican circles, which should help him along as we go along. But Meanwhile, turning back to his romantic life, William and Elizabeth's courtship continued apace. And as described by historian Anya Jabbour, as this courtship was more in the northern style, where they, quote, left their daughters alone with their male visitors. Ooh.
Because it was cold. It was real cold in the north.
Yes.
So they didn't think they'd be able to do much.
Yeah. They're all bundled up.
Bundling boards?
They're all bundled up. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And this would have involved William courting Elizabeth, quote, at large gatherings, such as balls, in small groups, and alone in the Gamble's middle parlor. This middle parlor was the last place that couples could, and Elizabeth and William did, make and break engagements without parental knowledge.
Ooh. I don't know that much about architecture. Middle parlor, it implies an upper and lower parlor. I'm fascinated. I'm making a pin for myself to go dig into parlors later.
How many parlors did they have at this point?
Right. I mean, there were so many that once you got to the middle, you had several minutes to yourself because it would take a while to find you. It's like Severance, to get to that middle parlor. A lot of twists and turns.
Lots of twists and turns. You're probably tired. You've been wandering through the parlors for a bit. You just need to rest.
Yes. Yes.
And oh, Elizabeth, you're here too. Okay, let's talk.
Hey, Nancy, where's your sister? Oh, the middle parlor? Okay, I'll be back later.
I'll leave a trail of breadcrumbs to find my way out. Now, Elizabeth rejected William's first proposal in 1800, but as Jabbour notes, quote, at the time, Southern women rarely accepted an initial proposal. So even though their courtship's being carried on in more of the northern style, she is still of the South. And so there are some of those rituals that are also in play.
It's a lot like watching those documentaries about birds and, the nests they build and the dances they do. That's how I feel looking at not just the South, but some of those courtship rituals of the past.
Oh, yes. Very elaborate. And it's like, how do you know these rules? Is there a book out there? Is there a manual?
And maybe there was, because you were either courting somebody or dueling somebody. Those were your two choices.
Exactly.
There were lots of rules to both.
There were lots of rules to both. So you had to know all of the rules.
And if you do the courting thing wrong, you end up in a duel. So there's no winning.
There's no win. Hold on, I'm done with this book. Let's pull out the dueling book.
Yes.
But Jabbour also notes that Elizabeth's youth and the possibility of rumors of the newcomer's recent partying may have also played a factor in her rejection of Wirt, though we have no way of knowing for certain.
He's a bad boy.
He was a bad boy, which, you would think would be attractive, but, But it also didn't help that Elizabeth's parents favored another suitor.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not good. And we actually have a story here because according to Glassner, Elizabeth's father stopped into Wirt's law office one morning and found William with some friends who he had been making the rounds with from the night before. As described by Glassner, quote, when the colonel, i.e. Elizabeth's father, walked in, Wirt stood with his back to the door. Clad only in underwear with a wash basin on his head and brandishing a fireplace poker and sheet iron blower, Wirt was engaged in a dramatic presentation of Falstaff's onset upon the thieves.
Just when I thought I couldn't love him enough, I mean, you're like, oh, he bought a human being, and I'm like, that's bad. But now I'm like, okay, he's not all bad.
He's not all bad.
And so the father of the woman he was courting walks in on this dramatic early morning hungover performance.
In his underwear. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's risky business type stuff.
It's risky business. It is quite awkward. And so we can kind of understand why the parents were, maybe you should consider somebody else.
I have a daughter, and that's what I'd be looking for, actually, is somebody who could perform Falstaff.
In the early morning after a night of partying.
Yeah. Yeah. I want my daughter to be entertained.
Yeah. And he definitely sounds like he was very entertaining. Apparently, Elizabeth did like the bad boy enough. She allowed the courtship to continue. And so William persisted. But Elizabeth fell ill for some time and apparently entertained another suitor. But William remained loyal to her. And in January 1802, he proposed again. But yet again, apparently out of respect to her parents' wishes, Elizabeth refused in a more forceful manner.
Ooh.
Yeah. Rejected. And with this rejection, William accepted a position as Chancellor of a new Court of Chancery in Williamsburg, and relinquishing his post as Clerk of the House of Delegates, moved away from Richmond. So it was so bad that he moved out of town.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was after years of courtship, right?
Yeah, because they started, let's see. So we believe that they met sometime towards the end of 1799. So she's rejecting him January 1802. So this has been a couple of years in the making, and yeah, it's not happening.
Playing the long game, the long parlor game.
Yeah. You picture this as kind of like a sitcom, and this is the season finale, that you have this dramatic breakup, and then she goes to see if he's okay, and she finds he's left town.
It's like when Diane said, "I'm just going to be gone for 6 months, Sam."
Yep.
6 months.
We know what those moments are like when we come back to the new season and either there's a new character or, something happens.
Yeah, it's usually Kirstie Alley.
It's usually Kirstie Alley. So, next season of Elizabeth. She's got a new friend.
Yes.
Now, as noted by Glasser, in addition to this posting being a great honor to William, as he was unanimously chosen by the state legislature for it, William shared with a friend later that in accepting the post, he was thinking, in Richmond, he had been, quote, dissipating my health, my time, my money, and my reputation. This conviction dwelt so strongly, so incessantly on my mind that all my cheerfulness forsook me, and I awoke many a morning with the feelings of a madman. So he's having some self-revelations, maybe I'm not in the best of places. Maybe a change of scene will help me move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it work?
Well, though there was a pause in their interaction, this was not the end of the story for William and Elizabeth. And the separation allowed them, quote, time to reevaluate their feelings. Indeed, Elizabeth had been inclined to accept the second proposal, and, as the old saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Because though around this time William did begin courting someone else, of course, in the next season, you've got to have him doing what she did and going ahead and having a new girlfriend. She's going to get jealous. But he continues to ask about Elizabeth, until finally he returned to Richmond and met with her in a private conference in the middle parlor.
In the middle parlor? Was that it?
Of course, in the middle parlor, where Elizabeth promised to marry him. There was, however, still the matter of Elizabeth's parents to deal with.
I feel like they're going to die any minute, right? Is that going to happen?
Well, keeping their engagement secret until they could secure her parents' blessing, Wirt wrote to her father, Colonel Robert Gamble, in mid-June 1802. And in this letter, he humbled himself to the colonel, asserting that, quote, I have too often forgotten my health and that character of systematic steadiness, so important to a professional man. But he pledged henceforth to practice, quote unquote, moral purity, and pledged his love to Elizabeth. He asked her father to talk to Elizabeth about the matter. And after he had, Colonel Gamble wrote back that he appreciated Wirt's quote unquote frankness and was confident in his quote sincerity in resolving to reform. And he decided and concluded the choice was Elizabeth's to make.
Lovely. I wonder how bad the other guy was that Elizabeth was dating in the meantime.
Because you're getting to that point in the new season. It's towards the end. You've got to have the big reveal at the season finale that they're back together. And so something happens with the other guy. He turns out to be a jerk, even though he's been portrayed as, this great guy beforehand. He's a jerk. He ends up, pissing off the parents, and then go to your true love.
Tale as old as time.
A tale as old as time. Hollywood, you have ingrained this in our minds. So William and Elizabeth had courted for 3 years before becoming engaged for 3 months prior to their marriage. I mean, at this point, you don't need a long engagement.
No, let's get this thing going.
And again from Jabor, quote, the Wirt's lengthy and sometimes stormy courtship revealed the fault lines between their new ideals of companionship, reciprocity, and mutuality in an egalitarian, romantic relationship, and older and enduring notions of marriage as a hierarchical bond between a superior patriarch and a submissive wife. So it seems like, and Jabor, her book is all about their relationship, and it is fascinating because it does seem a bit different from the norm of the time. It really does seem like they have times that they are more partners in ways that you don't get with some figures around this time. But you think of folks like Abigail and John Adams. They tried to negotiate their own partnership separate from what the norm was. And it seems like this was a situation of that.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a description. Did Jabor write Hallmark cards before working on this book?
You got to do something before you're published.
It's true. That's I love your hierarchical relationship empirically with me.
An enduring.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
Keep enduring. Now, when they wed on September 7th, 1802, William was 30 and Elizabeth was 18. So it was one of those times that, there was a little bit of an age gap between them. Not too bad, but still somewhat of an age gap. And after
you cut out right at her age. How old was she?
She was 18.
Okay. All right. That's not bad for the time. Hey, wait, after all of these years, wait a minute. They were dating for years and they finally get married and she's just 18.
And she's just 18.
So she's in the middle parlor. She's rejecting him. She's with some other guy. He's off starting his career and she's, 16. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That changes the middle parlor.
It a little bit, yeah. I didn't know the middle parlor was like the Max and Saved by the Bell.
They've got to go in for milkshakes. And meanwhile, he's supposed to be like this, young suitor, and he's really like getting close to 30.
Yeah, we're talking about Cheers and Friends and people in their late 20s, early 30s, and she's in Degrassi Junior High. Like, I didn't realize that, Jerry. That changes things.
But at least she's 18 when they finally marry.
Yes, which with inflation, that was like 27.
There we go. The inflation of ages at the time.
Yes.
And so, we finally have they're together. And after the ceremony, they moved together to Williamsburg. But it quickly became apparent that staying in Williamsburg was not the best option available to them because since the state capital had moved to Richmond, Williamsburg had started down a path of decline to the point that a William and Mary student described the town a couple of years later as, quote, daily crumbling into ruins. So not a good place that you want to start a family or anything. And Further, Wirt felt an increased pressure to provide for his new wife and their anticipated growing family. As he wrote to a friend in February 1803, quote, "This honor of being a chancellor is a very empty thing, stomachly speaking." That is, stomachly speaking.
Stomachly? Wow. How do you not love him when you read him?
I know. And he goes on, he describes it. That is, although a man be full of honor, his stomach may be empty. Or in other words, honor will not go to market and buy a peck of potatoes.
If there's one thing I've always said about honor, that's not it.
It won't buy a peck of potatoes.
It won't. No. And that won't play in Peoria for sure.
No. And that's the thing. Like and again, this is going to become something, it's a common theme in Wirt's life. He is constantly thinking about, how am I going to support my family? And even more so, like in this quote, it goes on and he even says, if death comes, how will my wife and family live? He is constantly thinking of being able to support his family.
And death was such a reality to him, too.
Yeah, exactly. You can understand why it's on his mind. He's been at that place where he had nobody to turn to. And so thus, William resigned his post as chancellor, and in 1803, the Wirts moved to Norfolk. Now, they did consider the possibility of moving to Kentucky, where cheap land was plentiful. However, Elizabeth was not keen on the idea of moving so far away from her parents. So she was close to her family. She's like, we're never going to see them if we move across the mountains. We need to be closer. As described by Glasser at this point, quote, Norfolk was a bustling seaport town with a population of more than 9,000 residents. While it may take longer to make his fortune in Norfolk, as Jabbour attests, this port city, quote, seemed the ideal location for the steady income William desired by riding the judicial circuit in an area growing as a hub for trade and mercantile operations. So there, this was a time trade was growing, the area was growing. It's like, this is a place where he can really start to make some money. And indeed, in a letter to a friend, Wirt predicted, quote, that with the blessing of Providence, I shall be able to retire from business in 10 or 15 years with such a fortune as will place my family at least above want.
Well, that's nice. He's thinking ahead.
He's thinking ahead. He's planning for his retirement.
Or inevitable death. And that's, thoughtful.
Yeah. You want to think about those things. Yeah. But there was one problem.
Yeah.
He had never practiced maritime law.
Oh, that's my favorite kind of law, just based on the name.
You just like the maritime aspect of it.
Yeah, because I picture pirates, and that's probably very little of maritime law, but I'd like to think that it's mostly pirate related.
Yeah, well, let's just say he was dealing with piracy.
Okay, all right.
He would have to choose between, is he going after pirates or is he defending pirates?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's...
It's a choice. But, of course, William has proven himself time and again. He just applied himself to studying maritime law and filling in this gap. So he's ready. He's going into this new law practice. The home they moved into would also become Wirt's law office, and soon enough, William and Elizabeth became partners in managing household operations. Elizabeth helped William keep his legal papers in proper order and also supervised his law clerks. And he would need this help because his world was starting to expand in that year, both professionally and personally. Because 1803 saw the publication of Wirt's The Letters of the British Spy, which was described by his biographer Glasser as, quote, a controversial series of satirical essays on American society and prominent lawyers and politicians.
Oh, a satirist too?
Yes. You're like, just tell me more. Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, how busy can he be if he's also like, you know what? I need to satirize the world around me that is so busy. Elizabeth, can you kind of take over the business so I can write? That's a loving wife. That's my wife has to, Jess. Yeah, I feel like I put some stuff on her when I'm like, oh, gotta get that podcast episode out. Enjoy the house and the kids.
Oh.
So I identify with Wirt.
Yes. So you know where he's at. And this new literary career, he followed this up with a series of 26 essays, some of which were his and some written by others, which came to be known as, and I really want to do a deeper dive into this, but I feared it was probably going too much into a tangent. But this collection was known as the Rainbow Association and was published in 1804 and 1805. So while he's embarking on this literary career, soon after the move to Norfolk, Elizabeth became pregnant, and their first child, a daughter named Laura Henrietta, was born in early September 1803. And then their first son, named Robert Gamble, after Elizabeth's father, was born in late January 1805. But sadly, this pregnancy proved difficult, and for a bit afterwards, it was feared that Elizabeth may not survive. So you can only imagine what was going through his mind that, oh my gosh, here we are again.
Right.
But she did recover, and before long, she was pregnant again. In mid-September 1805, Elizabeth gave birth to their third child, a daughter named Emily. And so this is the same year that she gave birth to their son. That was late January, and then she gives birth again in mid-September.
And it was a rough pregnancy. She gives birth. There's a question, is she going to live or is she going to die? Oh, you're going to live? All right, immediately we need to have another. Okay.
Yes. And so you can imagine, not surprising, she ended up falling ill again after this pregnancy. And though Elizabeth did survive, their daughter Emily did not.
Mm.
It's like, hold off a little bit. Just let the poor woman recover.
Yeah.
Now, they would also expand the number of individuals that they held in slavery in order to work in this new expanded household. By 1806, they had, quote, 5 adult slaves, 2 men and 3 women, and an unspecified number of slave children. So, unfortunately, that number continues to grow.
Yeah.
And in addition to helping with household operations like, quote, spinning, weaving, and sewing, and tending to the livestock and garden, the enslaved women would also serve as nurses to the children. However, the Wirts soon grew concerned about entrusting the safety of their children to the care of those they enslaved.
Interesting.
I mean, you think that people may not like being enslaved? Maybe?
Yeah. I just wonder what changed.
Well, and just kind of knowing at this point, and this is a point where you start to hear more about slave uprisings, insurrections. Of course, this is after the Haitian Revolution has happened. And so this is starting to become more in the white planter class, this fear of slave rebellions. And this is after Gabriel's Rebellion in 1800 in Richmond. And so being from Richmond, you can imagine she's talked with her parents about it. She knew about it. So it's not completely surprising, but then it's also like, well, why don't you just stop enslaving people if you're afraid they're going to rise up? But
yeah.
But initially, after their move to Norfolk, like other well-to-do people in the South living on the coast, the Wirts would spend the summer and autumn further inland to avoid the sickness that the hot and humid months brought about. However, William began to grow upset at the drag that this move for a portion of the year was having on his household profits. It's not easy making that complete move, and he's not able to really do work. So thus, he ended up staying in Norfolk in 1805 to attend to his legal practice, only leaving at the advice of his physician, and then he would only go as far as Richmond. So he's still very much focused on, we've got to make money. Even when the family was settled in Norfolk, William was often away on business, but he tried from afar to provide what emotional support he could for Elizabeth and to help guide the education of the children. As described by Jabor, between November and May, William was often at home, but the spring and the fall saw him away for months at a time. In the summer and part of the fall, they would reunite at home or at relatives' homes. Now, Wirt did talk at times about retiring from his legal practice so that he could be at home more, but with each year, he continued on with business as usual. And this will also be another theme that kind of runs through Wirt's life. This idea of, well, I really want to spend time with my family, but maybe one more year as a lawyer. And Elizabeth took him to task at times, in one letter writing that, quote, "You say your clients expect it of you, but my husband, will they provide for your children, guide, instruct, and raise them to happiness and virtue?"
Oh.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, you need to get on home. I need a break.
Yeah.
And pick up some dinner on the way, please and thank you.
Yeah, it's hard when you're there with the people you enslave, but you don't trust them to raise the children, so it's all on you.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. And so finally, in 1806, Elizabeth began to talk with William about the possibility of moving to Richmond, and by July, they were preparing for the move. Now, though their time in Norfolk had been fruitful in terms of William's career, it was not as refined of a city in terms of society as Richmond. The Wirts had been witness to 2 massive fires in the city during their residence, as well as a yellow fever epidemic. And further, Wirt complained that, quote, "Norfolk is very expensive."
So Richmond it is?
Yeah, so Richmond it is. Like, Norfolk, we're done with you. Let's move back to Richmond. And when the Wirts made the move to Richmond, they initially rented a, quote, row house located in the industrial district west of the capital. Now, the success of their new homestead would require them to partner closely as, quote, Elizabeth expanded her role as William's informal assistant and as the director of a productive household, and William shouldered much of the responsibility for supervising household production. So she's like, we need to figure out what all we need to do, and let's split up the responsibilities. And not only would Elizabeth help her husband in his practice by, quote, copying his letters, delivering legal documents, sorting paperwork, paying bills, and passing along information to William's business associates, but she also, quote, advised him on what cases to accept and on what to charge his clients.
Yeah, I mean, that's a partnership.
Yeah. And she is very much, she's this trusted partner. She is a business manager.
Yeah. She's I forget the woman in Perry Mason, but that's her.
Yes. Della? I think her name was Della. Yeah. Yes. So there we go. She is running this law practice.
Yeah.
Of course, the initial burden of establishing the household would chiefly fall on Elizabeth, as William traveled to Williamsburg to attend the courts there in the fall. And this was despite the fact that Elizabeth gave birth sometime that summer or fall to a 4th child, who they named Emily, after the child that they had previously lost. And this Emily lasted just around a year, passing away shortly before Elizabeth gave birth to a 5th child, a daughter named Betsy Gamble, in late October 1807. Betsy lasted less than a month, dying in late November.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And you can imagine the strain of so many pregnancies in a short amount of time was really starting to wear on Elizabeth's health. And oh, by the way, did we just mention that she was running the household, his legal practice, all of this? Yeah. Wow.
That's a lot, And at this point, she's only 17 years. No, she's not.
Early 20s at this point.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. Now, shortly after the move, Wirt's career got a boost when he was asked to defend the accused murderer of the venerated George Wythe, who had served as a mentor to Thomas Jefferson, John Marshall, and other prominent lawyers in Virginia. Now, in this case, Wyth's 17-year-old great-nephew, George Wyth Sweeney, lived with Wyth and, quote, yeah, that's a tongue twister, lived with Wyth, quote, and was expected to inherit a generous portion of Wyth's estate upon his demise. Now, given the motive of getting his inheritance sooner rather than later, Sweeney was accused of poisoning and murdering Wyth, as well as a free mixed-race youth, Michael Brown, who lived in Wyth's household. As Brown was included in Wyth's will and the provision that should Brown proceed with in death, his portion would go to Sweeney as well, there was also a motive there.
Wow. That's
yeah.
bad. That's not a great nephew, if you ask me. I'm going to disagree with you, Jerry. I don't think that's a great nephew.
Yeah, he is not a great nephew. Because he was also brought up on charges of forgery, as he had forged his great uncle's signature on checks drawn on the Bank of Virginia.
Now that's where I draw the line.
Forgery. I mean, murdering a couple of people, that's fine, but forgery, come on.
Forgery is just uncouth.
How dare you? You are not a great nephew.
There's no honor in forgery.
There's no honor in forgery. No peck of potatoes there.
He poisoned them, you said?
Yes.
Wow, that's usually, I mean, it's a, stereotype, but that's a woman's way to kill.
I know, right?
Lots of old things I've seen.
What
a coward.
Yeah. Yeah. How dare he? I mean, he should challenge them to a duel.
I mean, I guess if your goal is to make it look like an accident, I don't know what his plans were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, and we'll talk more about the circumstances in a moment, because that really, it gets to, like, really, that was what you chose to do. But yeah, so, bringing this back to Wirt coming in. So Sweeney asked Wirt to serve as his defense attorney, and Wirt debated what to do, as he initially did feel Sweeney was guilty and that it may hurt his standing in the Richmond legal community if he's, defending this guy who killed the guy that everybody in the legal community loved. But finally being convinced that there was a possibility of Sweeney's innocence, Wirt joined Edmund Randolph in defending the young man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did Burr and Hamilton come down and help defend too? Was it a true dream team?
No, but put a pin in Burr. We're going to come back to him in a minute. So this trial took place on September 1st, 1806. Unfortunately for the prosecution, the main witness was Wyth's cook, Lydia Broadnax, a free black woman, and you probably can see the problem. Yeah. So Lydia was ready to testify to seeing Sweeney put a white substance in the coffee pot the morning Wyth and Brown fell ill. Mm. And so in the account that I read of this, like, multiple people in the household fell ill because, of course, everybody drank from the same coffee pot. So it's like, if you just wanted to kill them, why did you put it in the coffee?
Sounds like if you just wanted to kill them, how much do you care about collateral damage?
Yeah.
Like, it's not, it's not like other people died that he was hoping to run away with, that I'm aware of.
that we know of. He's like, well, John was kind of a jerk to me, so if he dies too, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. That's not the greatest defense.
Yeah.
But he hurt other people too.
But the problem with Lydia testifying, the state of Virginia did not allow black people to testify against white defendants. Mm. And so Wirt and Randolph were able to keep her from the stand, and thus Sweeney was acquitted on the murder charge, though he was convicted on 2 of the 6 counts of forgery. So, yes, the forgery ended up being the bigger issue. Yeah.
All right. Did he, you may not know this, do you know if he inherited everything, or was that stopped?
I believe he did. I don't know for certain, but even with the 2 counts that he was convicted on, Wirt was able to secure an acquittal of those charges as well on an appeal.
What?
So he got off scot-free.
Impressed with Wirt.
Yes.
Sweeney Todd.
Yes.
I don't like him.
No, not a lot of people did. And of course, folks, just like you said, they're like, he's obviously a really good lawyer. This raised his profile, but Wirt felt a pang of guilt about winning this case. And as he wrote to Elizabeth, quote, "This zealous advocation of causes at which my soul revolts, this playing of nurse to villains, and occupying myself continually in cleansing them, it is sickening even to death. But the time will come when I hope it will be unnecessary."
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he's pained and wrote about it.
Yes.
That's nice.
Yeah. At least he realized, it's what a lawyer is supposed to do, but he didn't feel good about it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense when it sounds like he believed he was guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned Burr, Howard. The year following their move to Richmond, Wirt took on another prominent case as he was employed by the prosecution in the treason trial of Aaron Burr. And again, just like with the Calendar case, he was the youngest member of this legal team.
So he's Mr. Defense Attorney, getting bad guys off, but now he's on the prosecutor's team, trying to put somebody away. Okay.
Exactly. Because, of course, who's president at this point? His friend Jefferson. And Jefferson was kind of concerned about the prosecution because at this point, Burr's defense team included 2 former U.S. attorneys general, as well as the former attorney general of Maryland.
Wow, good for Burr.
Good for Burr, but Jefferson was like, I know a guy.
I mean, and also you got to think like Burr, he could have defended himself.
Yeah.
He was a brilliant lawyer as well. So that's quite a dream team.
Yeah.
So Wirt, wow, good luck, Wirt.
Yeah. And funny enough, though Wirt would serve on the prosecution, his in-laws, the Gamble family, were staunch supporters of Burr, with his mother-in-law sending him fruit and calf's foot jelly, which I don't ever want to imagine what that tastes like.
Just call it jelly at that point.
Yeah, just say jelly.
It's just jelly. Here's some jelly. Have some jelly. Is it strawberry? No. Oh, is it grape? No. What's the flavor? Oh, it's calf's foot. Oh, really? It's not just made from calf's foot. It actually it tastes like calf's foot. That's the flavor.
Yeah.
There you go, Burr. We're giving this to you because we love you, Burr, because calf's foot is delicious.
Yum. Just what I was hoping for. Yeah. Yeah. But it's funny because you have these accounts of Burr while he's, being held, and all these women are bringing, food and jellies and stuff to him. And so apparently Wirt's mother-in-law was one of those.
And if I recall, Burr being held, he's in a nice house.
Yeah.
He's not in some cell.
No.
Yeah, he's not withering away.
He is not suffering. He is not. But even beyond the jelly, Wirt's brother-in-law served, quote, as one of Burr's securities.
Oh.
So they are all pro-Burr.
I wonder what Elizabeth felt.
Yeah, you really do wonder, was she, supporting her husband? Was she secretly rooting for him to fail? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back in her day, if the families were close, did she spend some time in an upper or lower parlor with Burr herself? We don't know. I don't know. Maybe you know. I'd like to think we don't know.
Or possibly the middle parlor.
Oh, no.
No.
How dare you?
I mean, that wouldn't be a plot twist.
No.
But of course, we know how this trial goes. It ultimately goes the defendant's way. Burr ends up getting off. But despite that, quote, William gained a reputation as a master of rhetoric and was in the public spotlight in a way that he had not been to date in his career. And indeed, one part of his arguments before the court, which came to be known as Who is Blennerhassett, where Wirt outlined Burr's relationship with another conspirator being prosecuted, Harmon Blennerhassett, in which he depicted, quote, Burr as the serpent in Eden, would be excerpted and used as an example of, quote, American oratorial excellence in classes in subsequent generations.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. When your losing case argument is so good that it becomes a lesson in oratory.
Yeah. Yeah. So not so much of a loss for Wirt. And it also helped that he earned $2,000 for his work just on this case, which, quote, easily paid the Wirt's living expenses for the entire year.
Nice.
But this didn't mean, however, that Wirt didn't attend the Williamsburg courts in November 1807. He's like, no, I'm just going to keep on working.
Oh, yeah. You can't. Wirt can't stop.
Wirt can't stop. Now, with the Chesapeake Leopard affair occurring off the coast of Virginia in late June 1807, so this is where British ship boards an American ship looking for people that they claimed had escaped from the British Naval Service. This was a big to-do. You don't violate our sovereignty right off the coast. Wirt took the lead in, quote, creating an all-officer brigade from volunteer regiments and offering its service to the president, and he took command of this brigade. Now, you can imagine Elizabeth not too happy about this.
No, now he's a lover and a fighter?
He's a lover and a fighter. And she even, is just pleading with him to relinquish his command. And she even uses, quote, for the sake of his dear little children. She's bringing the kids into this. Now, thankfully for both of them, this effort would ultimately prove fruitless as President Jefferson delayed taking military action in order to push forward his idea of economic coercion in the form of the embargo.
Sorry, I just thought about presidents and trade and how that doesn't go well sometimes. Anyway, go on.
No application to the modern day at all. Nope. Now, William would find another way to serve the Jefferson administration, because despite rejecting Jefferson's suggestion that he run for Congress, a seat that Glassner asserts he would have been a shoo-in for, Wirt did enter in the ongoing debate in newspapers in support of the administration. And this would garner enough attention that Wirt was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, assuming his seat in 1808. So he is finally starting this political career. But this early foray into politics did not impress William, who concluded that in politics, quote, all is rancor, abuse, hostility, and hatred, confusion, and ruin.
What?
No, not at all. Now, Wirt had to deal with this on a personal level as the presidential election of 1808 pitted Secretary of State James Madison against former U.S. Minister to Britain, James Monroe, both of these friends of Wirt's. Wirt was approached, quote, to serve on a committee to boost Monroe's candidacy and declined the offer. So he's having to pick between friends, and he's not picking Monroe. And he later wrote to Monroe,
Not
and
his time yet.
It's not his time yet. He's got to wait his turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Wirt later wrote to Monroe and explained, quote, that although I am personally more warmly attached to you than to Mr. Madison, for I knew you much better, and although I thought it would make very little difference to the happiness of the people of the United States which of you was president, yet for political considerations, I preferred Mr. Madison.
Yeah, you gotta get in line, by age, not by height.
Not by height. Madison would not win that one. But in 1808, with assistance from Elizabeth's parents, the Wirts moved from their rented house into a house of their own, quote, located at the northwest corner of 6th and Grace on Shockoe Hill. This house itself was described as, quote, large and commodious, amply sufficient for the accommodation of a genteel family with a garden, outhouses, etc. So they're moving on up.
Yeah, commodious, but no commodes inside.
Not inside. You got to go out.
Yeah, makes sense. It was the way of the time.
It was the way of the time. Now, Elizabeth would take the lead in renovations in their new home, to the point that, though it seems like their disagreements with the plans were few, she did at least once cancel the orders William had given to the workmen, quote, and gave her own instructions. So she's asserting herself. Some of the plans for the house were intended to make it easier to supervise the people that they enslaved there, with Jabur noting that, quote, the windows Elizabeth installed in the western wing allowed her to oversee the slaves at work in the yard, a utilitarian area used to butcher livestock, pluck chickens, milk cows, and so forth.
Oh, yeah, you want a great view of that.
you want a prime view of that, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, with an expanded household, the number of people that they enslaved increased to 8, and it allowed them to expand household operations, with William taking a, quote, active role in supervising meat processing and preserving. It would also be at this house that Elizabeth had her 6th child, a daughter named Liz, in early January 1809. A 7th child, a daughter named Catherine, followed in 1811. Then Elizabeth had twin girls, Ellen and Rosa, in late November 1812. Yeah, I mean, and, supervising the plucking of chickens and all of that.
It's a lot with and then twins.
And then twins.
Did they both survive?
As far as I know, I didn't see anything about them passing away, and luckily it seems like they were spaced out a bit more, of course, except for the twins, they came at the same time, but the other children they started to space them out a bit more, which allowed her time to recover.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, they're really starting their empire.
Yes, they are. We'll pause our conversation here, and I hope you'll come back next time for part 2 of the fascinating life and career of William Wirt. Thanks so much again to my friend and fellow podcaster Howard Dory of Plodding Through the Presidents for joining me for this episode. Once you're done with this episode, be sure to check out Plodding Through the Presidents wherever you get your podcast, or you can check out the website at plodpod.com. I'll have a link to Howard's website on the page for this episode on my website, presidenciespodcast.com. There, you can find sources used for this episode, past episodes of the podcast, and links to more information about all of the American presidents. You can also find out how you, yes, you, dear listener, can help to support the Presidency's podcast. Speaking of, I'd like to say a special thank you to our newest patron, Bruce. Bruce has been a listener for a while and a great supporter, so I'm very honored that he decided to take his support to the next level. For as little as $1 a month, you can join Bruce and all of our patrons in helping to support the work of Presidencies. As a token of my appreciation, all patrons get access to an ad-free feed of the podcast, as well as special patron-exclusive episodes. We're currently going through a series on the Postmasters General prior to that office becoming a cabinet-level post. With the latest episode alone, you have political scandal, shady land deals, potential corruption, and more. Also, each level of support has an additional perk. Just check out patreon.com/presidencies if you'd like to become a patron. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me via email at presidenciespodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach out to me on social media. I'm available on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Mastodon as Presidencies, on the formerly known as Twitter at Presidencies89, and on Instagram and Threads as Presidencies Podcast. I've also got a page on LinkedIn. Just search for Presidencies of the United States. Last, but certainly not least, I thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe and healthy, be kind to one another, and take care, dear friends.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Alien Earth, the official podcast. Each week, host Adam Rogers is joined by guests, including the show's creator, cast, and crew, in this exclusive companion podcast. They will explore story elements, deep dive into character motivations, and offer an episode-by-episode behind-the-scenes breakdown of each terrifying chapter in this new series. Search FX's Alien Earth wherever you listen to podcasts.